episode of Pyathlon. Today we'll be talking about adding logic to your program using if statements, else if statements, and else statements. In our last video we talked about getting user input, and we're going to use this logic in our program to validate the user input and then give the user some output via print statements based on what they entered. So first, we'll do what we did in the last video and get the user's age using the input function, and we'll store this in a variable called age. So we'll do age equals input, what is your age? And we'll run that, and we'll say 32 for now, hit enter. So let's say we want to make sure that our user inputted a value that is legitimate. So they inputted a value that is numeric. So we can test that using the if statement. So if statements are something you can add to your program that say if some condition is true, then do something. So in this case, we want to say if the age variable only contains numerical values, then we can do something. So let's write out our if statement. We can say if age that is numeric matches true, then we'll do something. And let's talk about what we just wrote. So every time you have an if statement, it starts with the word if. And then we'll do age that is numeric. Remember, age is going to be a string that we get from the input function with the user is expected to input their age. And the is numeric function returns true if the string only contains numbers, and false otherwise. And this right here is called a condition. A condition is something that evaluates to either true or false. So remember, is numeric will return a true or false value, and we'll compare that true or false to this true. So true matches true is true. This double equal sign is called the equality operator. It checks to see if the two things on either side of it are equivalent. So true is equivalent to true. And age that is numeric returns true or false, and we're comparing that to see if it's true. So if is numeric returns false, then this whole condition will evaluate to false. And remember, this evaluates to true because 32 only contains numeric values. So what do we want to do if the variable only contains numerical values? Let's say you're writing a program that tells the user if they're eligible for a senior citizen discount, and only people who are 65 or older are eligible for this discount. Then your code would say if the age is greater than or equal to 65, then tell the user they're eligible. And if they're not greater than or equal to 65, inform the user that they're not eligible for the senior citizen discount. So how can we implement that in our code? Well, we'll have an if statement inside of an if statement. Here, remember, everything in this do something will only run if this condition is true. So if this is true, then we know they inputted proper input. And I'll type that in the comment here. So, one more thing I want to point out before I forget is every time you have an if statement, it always ends with this colon. And in Python, typically every time there's a colon, then that means whatever you have coming after that has to be indented. Otherwise, you'll get an error, which I'll show you in a second. So first, I'll delete these two cells just to clean up our code a little bit. And now, let's actually get to our second if statement inside our prior if statement. So remember, everything in the if statement only runs if the condition is true. So we're only going to check to see if they qualify for this discount if the value they inputted was a value we want to accept. Alright, so let's start programming our second if statement. we can say if age is greater than or equal to 65. Now remember, this is another condition that will evaluate to true or false, because age will either be greater than or equal to 65, in which case this will evaluate to true, or age will be less than 65, and this will evaluate to false. And remember, since it's an if statement, we'll need the colon. This symbol here means greater than or equal to. In Python, you can also change that greater than symbol to a less than symbol, and now this means less than or equal to. But here, if they're greater than or equal to 65, we want to tell the user they're eligible for our senior citizen discount. So remember, we have a colon, so we can indent, but Jupyter Notebook auto indents first, so we're good. And we can just say print, you are eligible for the discount. So if they're not eligible for a discount, we want to tell them that also. As a built-in function that can do that for us also. Remember, the code in the if statement runs if a condition is true. If that condition is false and we want to do something, we need to use an else statement. So, and here's a quick note, your if and your else need to be at the same level of indentation. So since our if is indented here, we need to go back and then type else and colon. And that's all you need for an else statement. And then remember, when you see the colon, you have to indent the corresponding lines that go with that else. So this is saying if age is greater than or equal to 65, print you are eligible for the discount. Else, print you are not eligible for the discount. Alright, so remember, age right here is 32. So if we run this, what do you think happens? And you'll get an error. And all this is saying is, remember from our last video, the input function returns a string, but we're comparing a string to an integer here. And Python can't do that. Python will crash and say, you can't use this operator between a string and an integer. So we also discussed casting variables in our last video, so we have to cast a variable. But where should we cast it? Should we cast it here? Let's try that and enter 32 again and hit enter. And then run this. If we cast it here, now age is an integer and we can no longer use the isNumeric function. But remember, we want to be able to validate the user input. So we should want age to be a string here, but it should be an integer here when we go to compare it. So we shouldn't cast it there. What we should do is cast it here. So we'll do if int age is greater than or equal to 65. Remember, we know age is numeric. We know that's true because we're inside of this. Actually, let's add an else statement and tell the user if they've inputted an incorrect value. So we can do if age is numeric, then we'll check their age and see if they can get the discount. And here, this will run if age is not numeric. And here, we'll just tell the user to please input a numerical value. We can say, please try again and input a numerical value. Alright, so let's run this again. We'll say age 32, hit enter, then run this. It says you are not eligible for the discount. Let's run this again and change this to 67. Run this again. It says you are eligible for the discount. Now let's do something weird with our input and try to crash our code. Let's say it says what is your age, and we respond with what is your age, and hit enter and run this again. It says please try again and input a numeric value. And this code here is good because the user can input whatever they want, and the code will still run, and it will inform them if they've inputted an incorrect value. And if they've inputted a correct value, then we'll check to see if they're eligible for the discount. Say if they're greater than or equal to, if their age is greater than or equal to 65, they can get the discount. But let's say you have a partial discount for people who are between 60 and 64. So now we have multiple conditions. We say if age is greater than 65, they can get the discount. If their age is between 60 and 64, they can get a partial discount. And otherwise, they're not eligible for any discount. So how can we add that 60 to 64 into our code? Well, that's what an else if statement does. We add an else if statement very similar to the way we added an if or an else statement. We do else if, but in Python, else if is shortened to elif. And the else if statement requires a condition. Else is just a catch-all, and it's saying if the if statement condition wasn't true and the elif conditions weren't true, you can have more than one else if statement in a structure like this. You can have as many else's as you want. So the else will only run if the if condition was not true and none of the else's conditions were true. Else is the catch-all for if all of them were false, then the else runs. So we want to check to see if age is greater than or equal to 60 and less than or equal to 64. So let's do that. Remember, we have to use int age. We could have a new variable up here where we say integer age equals int age, and then we can refer to that variable instead of casting it every time. You can do either way. It depends on your personal preference. But for now, we'll just cast it to get you comfortable with casting variables. So we'll do else if age is greater than or equal to 60. But wait, we said if age is greater than or equal to 60 and less than or equal to 64, they get a partial discount. But we can only have one condition inside of an else if condition, right? No, that's not true. You can actually have multiple conditions, and you can use these things called logical operators to chain them together. So we only want to award a partial discount if age is greater than or equal to 60 and age is less than or equal to 64. And if we want to add another condition that we both want, that both need to be true for the overall condition to be true, then we can just say and age less than or equal to 64. This is a logical operator. There are three logical operators in Python: and, or, and not. For this condition to be true, both of these subconditions must be true. So age must be simultaneously greater than or equal to 60 and less than or equal to 64. If one of these is true but the other one is false, this condition will not run. This will evaluate to false. However, if you use the or, then only one of these has to be true for this entire condition to evaluate to true. And not is called the negation operator. It is, if the condition is true, then you can use not to make it false and vice versa. But we just want this to run if they're both true. And in the else if, just like in the if statement, you'll have your colon at the end, which means you need to end it. And then we'll inform the user you are eligible for a partial discount. Alright, so let's run this again, and we'll set age equal to 62 and press enter. And then we'll run this, and it says you're eligible for a partial discount. If we do it again, 67, you're eligible for the full discount, and at 23, you are not eligible for the discount. So thank you for watching this video. If, else if, and else statements are foundational to programming in any language. So it's very important that you understand these concepts moving forward. But thank you for joining us in this video, and we hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.